Well, we get to start the bone chapter out with something that you already know about. You already know about the cartilages, and you get to be tested on the cartilages, so that's great news to you, right? There are three types of cartilage in the body: the hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and the fibrocartilages. And which one is the most common type of cartilage in the human body? That's right, hyaline cartilage. And hyaline cartilage is just everywhere. Hyaline cartilage is in the respiratory system. We call those the respiratory cartilages. So here it is in the trachea, and it goes all the way down into the lungs, and it keeps our respiratory passages patent. That would be open. Here it is in the larynx. It's that thing in your throat that goes up when you swallow if you want to feel on your neck. Keeps it nice and open. Here is the hyaline cartilage and our costal cartilages that connects our ribs to our sternum. We see the hyaline cartilage at the ends of our long bones. So here are the ends of our long bones. We call those our articular cartilages. We see it on our nose. And our hyaline cartilage also makes up the embryonic skeleton. So hyaline cartilage is pretty abundant. On our elastic cartilage, where are the two places in the human body where we find elastic cartilage? Yes, we find elastic cartilage in our ears. It's very elastic, very flexible, so we find it on our outer ear. And we also find it in our epiglottis up here. That's where our epiglottis is located. It's at the top of our windpipe. Prevents food from going down and getting lodged in our trachea. And our last but not least, we have our toughest cartilage because of all the collagen fibers in it. That would be our fibrocartilage, and fibrocartilage is found in the three places that we mentioned in chapter 4. Where would those three places be? Place number 1, down here, the menisci of the knees. Meniscus is singular, menisci would be plural, so here's a meniscus over here, and here's the meniscus here. We see the light blue around it because that would be at the end of this long bone. This is our femur, this is the tibia, so it'd be the end of this long bone, so that would be the hyaline cartilage. That's articular cartilage, but the red you see here is the meniscus. And then also here's the second location. This is our pubic symphysis. This is one pubic bone here and one pubic bone, so when they come together we call this location the pubic symphysis, and this cartilaginous disc between the two pubic bones is called the pubic symphysis. And our last location for our fibrocartilage would be these discs here, and because these discs are located between the vertebrae, we call these our intervertebral disc right here, intervertebral disc. So those are the cartilages associated with the human skeleton. And right down here I have the words appositional and interstitial growth. Cartilages grow in two different ways: appositional growth and interstitial growth. So here we have a slide of cartilage. What type of cartilage do you think this is? I hope you said hyaline cartilage. It is hyaline cartilage, maybe not the best slide, but it's hyaline cartilage. And we have the two types of ways that cartilage grows. It's either going to grow from the outside. If cartilage grows from the outside, it's called appositional growth. If it grows from the inside, it's called interstitial growth. So growing from within a pad of cartilage is called interstitial growth. If we're a chunk of cartilage and we grow by adding layers on the outside, it's called appositional growth. Now, here's another term up here, perichondrium. Peri means around, chondr is the root word for cartilage. So anytime you see chondr, think cartilage. Anytime you see peri, think around. But the term perichondrium, on this slide of cartilage here, we see this dense irregular connective tissue. This does not look like dense irregular connective tissue in the least bit, and I know I can't fool you because we've had too many lab sessions at this point to say that this looks like dense irregular connective tissue, but you're going to have to believe me in the fact that it is dense irregular connective tissue. In the body, when you have all of this cartilage that you see everywhere, all these regions of cartilage, Cartilage, remember, does not have a blood supply, and it is not innervated. All this cartilage, no blood, no nerves. But on the outside of the cartilage, there's going to be a surrounding membrane, and that surrounding membrane is called the perichondrium. And that perichondrium is made of dense, irregular connective tissue, and it's full of blood vessels that will nourish all of these chondrocytes. So if I'm this chondrocyte right here, I'm going to need oxygen and I'm going to need nutrients to allow me to survive. Remember, I'm a little chondrocyte and I'm living in my lacuna. I wasn't a chondrocyte always. I used to be a chondroblast, and I made all of this surrounding cartilage. And once I trapped myself in my lacuna, then I differentiated into a chondrocyte. And now I'm a chondrocyte, and I'm living in here, and I'm trapped. I don't have blood vessels in my surrounding tissue, and so I need this oxygen and nutrients to diffuse down through this tissue. And it's going to come from the perichondrium, this dense irregular tissue up here. So all of that, the good stuff, has to diffuse down through here. The cartilage can only get so thick for that reason. And so here we have our perichondrium up here. I don't know if I need to say anything else about that perichondrium except for all the cartilage that you see on that previous slide will always have this perichondrium out here to support these underlying tissues. So remember that, perichondrium, perichondrium, perichondrium. It will also have nerve fibers out here, but the blood vessels are the most important thing. Cartilage can't get too thick. No blood, no nerves. Okay. Now if we're going to classify our bones just according to shape, we're going to classify them in these ways. We're going to have long bones, flat bones, short bones, and irregular bones. A long bone is a bone that's longer than it is wide. It doesn't mean it has to be very long. Like these are definitely some long bones here in our arms and on our legs. And I will tell you that our long bones tend to be in our arms and in our legs, in what we call our appendicular skeleton. Our appendicular skeleton would be here in our arms and our legs. Let me go back in a slide, in this first slide. See how the middle section of the skeleton is dark? We call this section of the skeleton that is dark the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton, this is the axis of the body here. It's a middle portion of the body. It includes our skull, the vertebral column here, along with the sacrum and the coccyx, this little bone down here, and our rib cage. That's our axial skeleton. Everything else that hangs off of it is called the appendicular skeleton. That would be our appendages down here, and the girdles that hold the appendages on. This is our pelvic girdle down here, and this is our pectoral girdle up here. This is the pectoral girdle, and this is our pelvic girdle down below here. So going back to our other slide, the long bones tend to be in the appendicular skeleton. So down here in our fingers, these might look like short bones because they're not too long, but they're classified as long bones because they're longer than they are wide. We have short bones. Short bones tend to be cube-like, and we find many of our short bones in our ankles and on our wrists. They're short, cube-like bones. I have a special word down here called sesamoid. The word is sesamoid. A sesamoid bone is a short bone that develops inside of a tendon. Tendons usually attach muscles to bones. Remember that ligaments attach bones to bone. Tendons attach muscle to bone. But a sesamoid bone is a short bone that develops inside of a tendon. And we're going to have two sesamoid bones. The patella is a sesamoid bone. It's classified as a short bone, and it's actually develops inside of a tendon. And we're going to have another sesamoid bone up here on the other side. You can't see it. It's on the other side of the wrist. Here it is right here, because the way this guy's arm is. It's the pisiform. The pisiform bone is classified as a sesamoid bone. Two more classifications here. We have flat bones. Flat bones, as the name suggests, are flat. Two great examples of flat bones would be the sternum and also the ribs. The ribs are classified as flat bones. And irregular bones are, like the name suggests, very irregular. They don't fit into any of these other categories. Great examples of irregular bones would be the vertebrae and the hip bones. Now, our functions of our bones include support, protection, and movement. Now, our bones don't actually move. Now, I don't need to go into much, I hope, much detail about support and protection. That's pretty self-explanatory about our bones. But on the movement aspect, our bones don't move us. Our muscle system moves us. Our muscles have to be attached to bone. But if you take away the bones, our muscles would just squirm around. I need to go ahead and say that. As it is for mineral and growth factor storage. Our bones store many minerals, mostly the calcium phosphates, and they store these things called growth factors. Growth factors help us grow, and they help us develop properly. And that's about all I need to say, because growth factors are incredibly complex. And we have many different types of growth factors. The type of growth factor that may be important, because we're going to come into it when we get into next semester, will be our insulin-like growth factors that you'll hear about. But back to the mineral storage, calcium phosphates are minerals that we store. Calcium is going to be very important to you because the amount of calcium that you have in your blood helps your nervous system function properly. It helps your muscular system function properly, and it helps your blood to clot. Without the proper amount of calcium in your blood, your nervous system does not function properly. Your muscular system does not function properly, and your blood cannot clot. So we store calcium in your bones, not to be strong, not for your bones to be strong, but rather to make sure we have a place, a little bank for our calcium in case we don't take in enough dietary calcium. So it's a nice bank for us. Another great function of your bones would be bone cell formation. This is the fancy term, or the anatomy and physiology term, for bone cell formation. Oh, this is supposed to say blood cell formation. This is a typo. This should say blood cell formation. The term for blood cell formation is hematopoiesis. Hematopoiesis is forming the different types of blood cells: red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. We form our blood inside of our bones. So hematopoiesis, this hemato means blood, and poiesis means formation. So again, this should say blood. I did not catch this before. And so this should say blood cell formation. Sorry about that. The place in our bones where we form blood will be in the red bone marrow, and it's going to be in a region, I'll show you a picture in just a little bit, will be on the edges of our bones. Will be in the region, not in the long portion of our bones, but on the tips of our bones, and in our long bones and some of our flat bones, and the spongy bone portion. Triglyceride storage. Believe it or not, our bones store quite a bit of fat, and triglycerides are the fats that we store there. Okay, now bone markings, this really should be in Chapter 7, because in Chapter 7 is where we really study bone anatomy. But I'm going to go just over a few words in this table with you, because I want you to be aware of all the different types of bone markings, or rather why they're produced. On our bones have different types of projections sticking off of them in different places. And the reason we have projections sticking off of our bones is usually because a muscle is attached and it pulls on those bones. Like we have trochanters on our femurs, and the reason we have trochanters in our intertrochanteric lines, and we have adductor tubercles, is because we have muscles constantly pulling and pulling and pulling on our femur. And in the region where we have muscles pulling on our femur, then we have the bone being stressed in that region, and we have bone growth in that region. Wherever we have smooth areas on our bone, the bone is not being stressed in that region, and we have no bone growth in that region, so we have a very smooth area. And so when we have words like this, tuberosity, crest, trochanters, lines, tubercles, epicondyles, spines, and processes. You need to pay attention to these words because they're letting you know what's going on in that region. Usually all of these words mean projections, but if we go to the next page, grooves, fissures, foramina, notches, these guys are depressions or openings. So you need to look over this table and get familiar with these words because these words are going to be words that come up in lab. They won't so much be words that come up on the test where you have to define these words, but it's handy to know what a foramen is so you don't just memorize the word foramen. So you know a foramen is a hole, or you know that a meatus is a canal-like passage. Please don't memorize this. It will just help you so you're not trying to, study. So you know that a meatus is this hole, and you're not trying to memorize that a meatus is some bump somewhere else, because then you'll understand that you're looking for a hole instead of a bump, in other words. So please look over this bone marking table. It will just help you. You're not going to be tested on this table. And also, this table, like I said, should be in Chapter 7. So when we get to Chapter 7 and we're in lab, maybe you should make a copy of this and insert it into your Chapter 7, and it will help you a great deal. Words that we use a lot: foramen, meatus, fossa, condyle will come up, head comes up quite a bit. Trochanter, tuberosity. We use quite a bit of these quite often. Okay. We're going to do the structure of the long bone in the next lecture.